Hey, if you like to hear the stories behind the guitars, stick around. Today we're going to play a couple of tunes and talk about this guitar. So it wasn't supposed to rain today. As soon as I got everything set up out here underneath the trees, it started to thunder. It's clouded up, so I don't know if we'll get this one in out here or not, but hopefully so. So I might have to rush through this one in parts. There's thunder. So anyway, this guitar, this is my 1997 Collings D2h. This is the guitar that I chose for my first place prize in 1997, the first time that I won Winfield. And it's a standard D2h, spruce top, East Indian rosewood back and sides. And of course, when I wanted it, I had my eye on a Collings for a while before that. Ever since the first one I'd seen was probably 3 or 4 years before that. A friend of mine named Gary Holmes had bought one. Basically, he had a 1946, I believe, D28, and he was starting to get a little paranoid about taking it all over the country to play it and everything. So he wanted a really good substitute guitar for that one. And he's the first one I ever saw. He ordered one straight from Bill back then, and Bill sent it to him, and I got to play that guitar, and I was blown away by it. So I wanted one ever since I saw that. And that was probably around 1993 or 4. So this was 1997 when I had the opportunity to choose this as a prize, so I jumped on it. And I think the other prizes that year was I believe a Gallagher Steve Kaufman model. I already had one of those, so I didn't want that one. And the other guitar was a Santa Cruz Tony Rice model, and I had gotten that one the year before when I took second place, so I didn't want that one either. And I would have probably had chosen this one anyway, regardless. So I got home with it, and the first thing I did, of course, was call Collins Factory to say, hey, thank you for an awesome guitar. I just won the contest, and I have this wonderful guitar, and thank y'all for making it, and I know it's really special. And I ended up talking to Steve McCreary, and that set off a pretty good, long relationship with them. We still do stuff once in a while, in fact. But, of course, I was on cloud nine. I just won, and I thought this has to be a really spectacular guitar. And Steve, in his usual dry way, says, "No, we just had our inlay artist take one off the shelf and send it out with the special inlay that we do in the headstock, but that's the only thing really special about it." So it kind of let the air out of my balloon for just a second, and he said, "Oh, wait a minute. You got the one from Winfield, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "That one went through Jim Baggett, and everything Jim Baggett orders from us has an 1 3/4 note, so that 1 3/4 nut width, sorry. So that one is kind of special, because everything at that time, standard nut width, was 1 11/16. So that was what he called making it a special order, and that was the only difference in it and any stock D2H at the time. And it's fine, because anybody familiar with Collins guitars knows they don't send out duds. So any guitar would have been fine from Collins. But I've had this one for a long time now, and there's a couple of stories I have to tell about this guitar. The first one that I'll tell you is, this is the only guitar that I have ever sold and bought back. Divorce will do that, make you sell things you don't really want to. And I sold it. And I sold it to a young gentleman named Jared Lewis in Alabama, if you're watching this, Jared. And of all the guitars I've sold, which has been a lot, there's been a handful of them that I've always said, hey, if you ever decide to sell this guitar, I would like a shot at buying it back. This was one of them. As it turns out, this is the only one that anybody has ever called me back when they got ready to sell it and say, hey, I'm going to turn loose that guitar you sold me, and you said you wanted first spot on it, so do you want it? Every other guitar I've ever sold, I didn't never have that option. I would just see it for sale somewhere, and that's kind of a bummer. But so Jared called me back. I guess it was probably 2007, I believe, probably when I sold this, 6 or 7, shortly after a divorce. And he calls me up 6 months at the most after he had bought it and said, hey, my wife and I are expecting a little girl, and I can't afford to keep this nice guitar. I'm going to sell it and get something, cheaper. Yeah, I just can't justify that kind of money in a guitar. And that's understandable. I think he was in his early 20s at the time, and we've all been there starting out or ending up in a divorce. Well, he called me back so soon, I hadn't recuperated from where I was at, so I just had to tell him. I said, I really, really appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to pass on it because I'm just not in a place to buy it back at this time. So go ahead and sell it with my blessings. And he did. I didn't hear anything about it. 2.5 maybe years later, maybe 3 at the most, something like that, I got a phone call one evening from a gentleman. A lot of us know him. He's a regular out at Winfield and stuff. His name is Bill Miller, actually. I think he was in Kansas City, Missouri, or somewhere around at the time. And there's that thunder we were talking about. So anyway, he calls me up one evening out of the blue, and basically he was looking at buying an older D18. I remember the conversation. I got gnats in my ear now. That's wonderful. He called asking me about a D18 that I had played and was apparently impressed with. And I play a lot of guitars, and there's really only a few that just blow me away, and I'll remember them. And I play a lot of nice guitars. And nice ones, after you play so many nice ones, they become mediocre, So he called and asked me about this D18. And I honestly don't remember that much about it. So we talked for a little bit, and then at some point in the conversation, he says, oh, by the way, I think I have your old Collins. I'm like, my old Collins? He said, yeah, your Winfield Collins. I'm like, really? He said, yeah. He said, I was thinking about selling it. I was like, you sure it's the one I had? He said, it's got the headstock inlay. I said, yeah. I said, who'd you buy it from? He said, a young fellow in Alabama. I said, that would be it. So it turns out it was. And that was in the middle of the summer, and he gave me a price on it, and I ended up buying it back for $50 more than I had sold it to Jared for. So I've got $50 in this guitar. And he basically told me, he said, yeah, that's all I can afford to let it go for. I had it fret stressed or something. He'd done a little upkeep on it. So, and it was a fair price. So I bought it back. He brought it to Winfield, no less. I got it back in Winfield. We met in the motel, and that would have been in September. So I bought it back. And it's the only guitar I've ever sold and bought back. That, to me, speaks a lot about the guitar. I'll tell you another quick story about this guitar as well. My friend Peter Fryfield. Peter had 1943 D2h that he had shipped up to Wayne Henderson from Jacksonville, Florida, to have some work done on it. And this is back when I still lived in Florida, and I think at the time Peter may have even been taking guitar lessons from me, and of course Peter turned into one of my dearest friends ever. So to save shipping the guitar back, when Wayne finished the work, whatever it was he had done on the guitar, neck reset or something, who knows, he said, well, I'll just send it with so-and-so. They're going up to IBMA in Louisville this year, and that'll save having to ship it, and you can just pick it up there. And of course, Peter jumped all over that. And I don't remember who delivered it. It was a courier service, but it was delivered. And we all get there, and I said, Peter, how did you get here? He said, I flew. I said, you're not flying home with that guitar, are you? He said, oh, yeah, it'll be just fine. I said, man, I hate flying with anything that, you know, could be destroyed by the airlines or anything like that. I said, I'll tell you what. And I had this guitar with me, and this was probably 2003-ish, something like that. And I said, I'll tell you what, you take my guitar on the plane with you. It's in a cotton case. It'll be fine. I'll take your guitar, because I drove up here from Jacksonville. I can carry yours in my vehicle. I'll get it back to you this week sometime when you come over for a lesson. He said, oh, it'll be fine. I was like, please, man, just swap guitars with me. He said, well, I'd feel really terrible if something happened to yours. I said, well, I would too, but, you know, it's not a vintage instrument, and I'm sure I could call Collins tomorrow, and they would send me another one if I really needed it. And I think we could do that, you know. I finally got him to agree to it. So he swapped guitars, and he flew out on Sunday morning, and they lost, Delta Airlines lost this guitar. It was missing for 2 days. They finally called him on a Monday evening and said they had located it somewhere, and they were going to bring it to the courthouse. He was a judge, and that's where he worked. And they asked him to stay where he was till the delivery guy could deliver the guitar to him. And so it was lost though for 2 days. And I didn't even know it, because Peter, I didn't call him when I got home, and he didn't call me. He called me Monday evening to say, I just want to let you know they lost your guitar, but they found it. They're bringing it to me. They should be here within the hour. And of course, he was sweating bullets. It wasn't his guitar, and I probably would have been too. But I honestly would have felt worse had that been his 1943 D2h lost in transit somewhere, you know. So I got it back, and it's been the worse for the wear from it. I've played it a lot. Love this guitar. I started doing workshops for Collins at some of their dealers a year after I won it, and it turned into a really good working relationship with them, and has been since. I've done some things with them through the years, and wind has picked up. This storm is blowing in, so I'm going to sign off. Thank y'all for watching.